I don't know where I'm going to sneak this into the video, but this is way after I've done all the recording. I realized I never went over the machine or the settings. So in this case, I'm using the Titanium Unlimited 200. This is a way new machine to me. It's got more stuff than I'm used to. I'm used to a buzz box with a freaking turn dial that moves a magnet through a transformer. So I'm quite upgraded here. It's kind of alien tech to me. This is your amperage dial. This is the majority of the thing you're going to focus on, is what amperage you're welding at. And the way you're going to kind of get in the ballpark when you first start, a lot of machines have it on the door. It's a multi-process, that's why it has a door. But this one in particular, I just wrote these down for just different rods and polarity, because that's also something, is DC electrode positive, DC electrode negative. Sometimes you weld with different ones depending on what you're doing. I don't think I'm going to get into that on this video, but for everything I'm using, we're going to be welding DC electrode positive. And this is just a chart to go over your material, your stick diameter. That's what the little fraction here is. You got 16, 3/32, 1/8 inch, and 5/32. And then right here it says 60xxx. I'm only using 6011 and 6013 in this video. There's also a rod called the 7018, and then the 70 other rods as well. I don't really use them that much, but that's also a different setting for those types of rods. They really simplified it on here, which I kind of appreciate. And the reason I say that is because right here is the rod I was using in this video. It's a 6013 1/8 inch. It says weld from 75 to 125 amps. I don't know if you saw before I started messing with this, but it was on 133. And that's the setting that I found worked the best. Granted, I was using some pretty thick material, but pick whatever setting that says. Probably try to shoot the gap right in between, and then lay a couple of beads on a piece of metal that doesn't matter. Or if you're just practicing, lay it on your practice thing. And kind of play with this dial until you get it just right, because it is a combination of your hand speed. That's what I covered mostly in this video, is what your hands were doing. But the machine settings are also going to make a big difference. Hey guys, so today I'm going to go over a basic kind of a for beginners video on how to stick weld. Now, I'm doing this because I had somebody mention that they were trying to learn how to weld, and I figured I would just throw my 2 cents out on the internet. So first, I wanted to go over the 3 main things you're going to be doing, at least with your hand, while you're stick welding, just so you kind of have an idea of what I'm referencing throughout the video. So there's your pattern, which is how you're moving the rod. Now here I just have an example of like 2 pieces of metal, and that little line in the middle is the seam. So there's your pattern on how you're moving your rod as you're welding. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. Honestly, there's an infinite amount of ways you can do this, as long as you're fusing the 2 pieces of metal together. That's the important part, so don't get too caught up in that. These are just generalizations, because when you first start, you're really going to have to think about how you're moving your hand. Once you've practiced a lot, that'll start to become natural, and you can start to focus on other things, like more how the puddle's forming and everything, and you can take less focus and brain power off of how your hand's moving. So for now, I'm just going to go over 3 basic movements here. The one I was taught first is the whip and pause. So that's the one I'm actually going to be showing when I'm physically welding, but you could do any sort of pattern you want. You could even do circles, but anyways, the first one is kind of a zigzag pattern, is where you'll start your weld here. You'll kind of let it build and pull up. You'll move a little bit forward, probably about half, maybe 1 full diameter of the rod, but kind of zigzag up as you go, and then hold for a half a second, and then you're going to come straight down, kind of fill in with material all the rest of that you just went up with at an angle. You're going to just come down straight, and then same thing, you're going to go up. That's how you're going to move forward, and then come down. And just fill that in with material, come forward on your upstroke, and then you're not gaining any ground when you're coming back down. So I'm about to show you the zigzag. Generally, that's just this. But if you notice, minus the up and down motion, I'm still doing a whip and pause here. I'm just adding some material and some motion just to really tie into that other piece. But as far as the dragging goes, I'm still doing a whip and pause. Now, another thing to note is I want the angle of my electrode really about a 45 towards where I'm moving. So that angle of your electrode is going to make a difference too. But I just wanted to kind of go over that. Like I said, I'm showing you this one. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. But just remember, that motion still kind of is a whip and pause, just with a little bit of flair. That makes sense. Anyways, a little pizzazz on your whip and pause. Hopefully, we'll see. over there, but we'll see. The slag will reveal exactly what I did. Label or anything else like that, so. I'm just gonna keep stacking some more weld on here and going over the different motions. It's kind of your zigzag motion. And then there's sort of a crescent moon shape. That's a little bit easier kind of on your wrist, just to sort of have a little more flowy motion. You'll find that you'll use different ones in different scenarios, but for now I'm just gonna go over laying a bead onto a piece of metal. You're moving your rod in a pattern to glue the two pieces together, but you're also gonna be feeding this rod with your hand because this is gonna be burning up as you're welding. So that's another thing you gotta pay attention. Another important thing to note is the angle you're holding this at. So here, I'll do this left-handed. Sometimes, like on vertical ups, so there's different welding positions, like I said. I'm just showing you a flat one, but there's different times where you're gonna wanna hold this at different angles. If I'm doing a vertical up, a lot of times I'm holding the rod perfectly like at a 90 with where I'm working. But normally with a weld like this, or even with a joint like this, I'm probably gonna be holding at about a 45-degree angle with where I'm dragging. With these, you're always dragging away from where you're welding because this coating on here, you'll see on the back, there's metal and then there's a coating. That coating is called flux. That's gonna melt off while you're welding, and what that's gonna do is it's basically creating a cloud of not oxygen so the weld can't rust. Now, you're gonna want ventilation when you're welding with this, or at least a respirator. This is a really good process to do outside because there's enough shielding gas. You can usually have somewhat unclean metal. Like for example, I'm not gonna prep this, I'm just gonna show you straight on this. One thing I want you to note is at the bottom left where I'm holding that electrode is I have it at an angle with the arc, and you can kind of see me feeding it into that puddle as I'm going. That's one thing you will need to pay attention to. That 45-degree angle with your work is going to be important. That's going to help the puddle flow a lot better. Second thing you're gonna be dealing with is your movement speed. And that's how fast you're doing all of this. These two things, like I said, feeding and dragging. So I'm kind of looping two things into there. So you got your pattern you're doing, and all the while you're feeding this and dragging your rod across whatever weld seam's gonna be. You're doing that, you gotta kind of know how fast to do that, because you can go too fast and then you're not really gonna be fusing, or you're not gonna be applying enough material, or you can go too slow. Quickly, I just wanted to go over too slow and too fast, and they didn't seem to do a great job at that. First, I'm gonna go too fast up top, and then I'm gonna throw a weld that's too slow and just kind of break it down the differences for you. So this is too fast. It might look okay with that little blanket on it, but it isn't. It's all right, but that's mostly because I had the settings really high. It didn't really get a chance to punch or illuminate anything very much. You can see it kind of just laid the material right on top and didn't fuse much. It doesn't have that like fusion that the rest of these welds have. So I'll go ahead and show you another one that's too slow. Didn't do a great job at cleaning this, but I'm in a bit of a time crunch here. It almost looks like a weave at this point, but... Woo! Right down my back. Oh my gosh, that was hot. I would call this too slow. You can see it kind of looks like a slug. Now, a better consistent weld bead should look something like that, and I'm not saying that's perfect. This is also, I got a weave going on there that I'm also not very good at, but it should have more consistent diameter and sort of a good peak going on at the top, but not too tall. This is way too much material being thrown on, and if you look at the corners, you're not getting any extra penetration, except for maybe the end here, but there is a sweet spot. Now, it's kind of hard to purposefully do something wrong. It's very easy to accidentally do something wrong. So these might not be great examples here because I was trying to do it wrong, but there is other examples that I'll try to look for throughout this video of me having just done it wrong naturally. Sort of, just to kind of clarify some things. I want to start by saying I am in no way, shape, or form a weld instructor, and I'm not a teacher, like certified, anything like that. And I'm not the place to go for like all the technical vocabulary terminology. I didn't even go to welding school. Out of high school, I had gotten a job in a machine shop and then lost that job due to it was an aerospace place and they were making the LEAP engines for one of the Boeing planes that had problems, and the 737 MAX, I think. But after that, I went into welding. I wasn't expecting to be a welder. That wasn't my plan or anything. It's just, I knew how to weld. My buddy already worked there. He told the boss, hey, I got a guy who knows how to weld. They gave me a test and they're like, all right, you know how to weld. So I worked there for a long time. And that's where I got the majority of the experience as far as just laying a bead down. And that's where I really wanted to emphasize. Once you finish this video and you're confident with laying a bead, gluing two pieces of metal together, your best bet for becoming a good welder is to cut a bunch of welding or metal squares and just weld bead after bead after bead after bead on it all day. Just keep doing that, keep practicing until you don't have to think about what your hands are doing anymore. And that's going to free up your brain to focus on all the other stuff like what you can build, or the puddle, how the heat's transferring. You don't have to think about how your hand's moving, you're just looking at that, so everything else is second nature. It just frees up a lot of processing power in your brain once you've got the hand-eye coordination part down. Anybody can weld. You could sit there and lay a bead. Anybody can become proficient at that as long as they have two hands. Once you've gotten past that point, it's just about reading the material and kind of learning the metal you're working with. In this video specifically, I was using a machine that I didn't really have any experience with. I was still having to learn that machine. I just got rid of the machine that I've been using for a long, long time. So that's a machine I knew and I got really good with. And it kind of was perspective enhancing because I realized using that machine, it changed the way my welds looked. I thought I was a way better welder. The first weld I laid, I'm like, what the heck? This doesn't look right. And I mean, granted, part of that was learning the machine, but again, I assume if I'd been doing this for, say, 10, 15 years instead of like 7, I might have used a bunch of different machines by now. I might have known already just the different little things the initial checks, right? I mean, there's the general, you always test on a piece of scrap before you test on your workpiece just to get your settings and everything right. But the more experience you have, I'd assume you might just know more machines just off the top of your head, how they weld, different things like that. It's just like driving. I've driven a lot of different vehicles. I know how certain vehicles drive. I've only used a couple of different welding machines. I never buy new welding machines. So I'll use the one I have until it's completely destroyed. In fact, that one right there I'm currently trying to fix, and I'm coming out with a video of me fixing it. It looks like the issue's in the PCB board, so I guess you'll get to see me try to diagnose and repair one of those. But that's the biggest thing I wanted to emphasize, is just practice, 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 practice. That's the only thing that's going to make you good at this, and it doesn't even have to be on a project. Just weld on a piece of plate metal. If somebody asks you to do something for them, maybe offer to do it for free for the first couple of times, because you're not going to be great at it. That's how I got a lot of experience, was doing free work for people that taught me different things so that I could later use that improved skill set to now charge people and make money for my work, because it's worth more. It actually does the trick a little better. So you're not going to be good. A lot of people on the internet act like they came out of the womb knowing how to weld. That's not the case. Nobody knew how to weld when they were born. Everybody started exactly where you're starting. So don't let people discourage you. Like I said, I've been doing this a while, and these aren't even the perfect Instagram welds you see on some of these videos. Don't compare to that. Just weld, compare your weld to what your weld looked like yesterday, and that's how you're going to know if you're getting better. Other than that, I guess I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you do, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I sincerely hope that this educates you in some way, shape, or form. So, God bless.